Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with the brand new franchise ranking. Well, okay, technically I should say trilogy ranking because this franchise is actually a trilogy of films, and this is actually not going to be a best to worst, but a best to weakest because this trilogy has no bad movies, or none of the films in this trilogy are bad. They're all good. It's just one of them is just weaker than the others, so it's a best to weakest ranking. And this ranking is going to be for none other than the Kung Fu Panda Trilogy. Yeah, that's what it is. And once again, no bad films in this trilogy. Y'all, I think they're all very great films, and easily my DreamWorks' best franchise. I'd say second best behind How to Train a Dragon because, well, in terms of having no bad movies, I mean, you can guys say Shrek is their best franchise, yeah, but their first two films are their best franchise. Everything after Shrek 2 was so yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, that one, so yeah, that's why Shrek franchise is bumped to 3. Sorry guys, but, so yeah. Anyway, with that being said, let's get on with pretty much what is the film that started it all, which would have to be my second favorite film in the series, and that would easily have to be the first film. Yeah. So when of course everybody saw the trailers, they didn't really think this film would really be that great. I mean, the concept seemed kind of ridiculous, going on a panda learning kung fu. Just what? But then the film actually came out, and everyone actually really loved it. It became the first non-Shrek film to earn so much money at the box office, and gained such critical acclaim that it actually got nominated for Best Animated Feature and became one of DreamWorks' finest films. So yeah. The film, what's this film about? Well, it's just a fun-loving panda named Po embraces destiny once he ends up being selected as the Dragon Warrior. Hero must basically defeat this villain named Tai Lung, who has escaped from prison and is actually also out for the Dragon Scroll. So yeah, pretty much the plot of the film, and I'd say this would have to be my second favorite film in the series, like I've already said. Here's why. One, the animation is really impressive for the time it was released in. It looks very crisp and smooth, and some very strong voice acting, especially from Jack Black. He gives a great performance as Poe. Easily, I think this definitely probably one of Jack Black's best roles. It's leading some epic. Love the epic climax battle between Poe and Tai Lung, and yeah, on the subject, even the previous battles between Tai Lung, the Furious Five, and Shifu, even if they both end up with the latter two losing to the villain, and it's a very likable, funny character, so especially Poe being this relatable and funny main character with more emotional depth than you'd expect. Also, another likable character would also have to be Shifu, and there's this arc of getting peace after Tai Lung's betrayal, hardening him for decades, and improving his relationship with Poe when he's forced to teach him, and also Oogway, that hilarious Taurus with great wisdom and emotional depth, and Tai Lung is a pretty industrious villain with a pretty captivating backstory and personal connection to Shifu, even if he's pretty forgettable. At times, some very entertaining action sequences, specifically like the prison breakout scene and in the final battle, and some very good quotes as well, like "There are no accidents," and even the whooshy finger holds skadoosh. And a great score composed by the one and only Hans Zimmer. Let's also not forget John Powell, who did the How to Train a Dragon score as well, also composed it with him. So, some even more awesome quotes like finally a worthy opponent or battle will be legendary, and some excellent comedy like Oogway saying he had something important to tell Shifu and to decide to begin blowing out countless candles one by one, all seemingly preparing to continue speaking only to keep blowing them out, combined with Shifu's irritated expression and Crane helping Poe out of the split. And speaking of which, it's one of the few pieces of media actually make fat jokes and execute them actually well, and tone is perfectly balanced, and the film knows when to be funny and it knows when to be serious, and some beautiful color palette and background for every scene, and a greatly executed lesson that you are the best when you be yourself, such as the Dragon Scroll being a perfect symbol, since the Dragon Scroll actually doesn't really have anything on it. It's all completely blank, and it has a great lesson for teachers that every student is different and can't learn the same way with with Po being a foodie being the perfect symbol, and also has a good lesson about how your flaws and weaknesses can become your strengths. And of course, it spawned an amazing franchise that had 3 films and 2 TV shows. However, this is ranking for the films, guys. I'm not including the TV shows on this. And now the bad qualities. The reason why this is not #1 best is because, well, it does get predictable at times, and Tai Lun is kind of a slightly forgettable villain, and since he doesn't really have much screen time, plus while he isn't the rightful wielder of the Dragon Skull, why should he be worried if he gets his hands on it? While there are films that stakes me over the high for the sake of high stakes, and becoming severely impersonal as a result exists, this doesn't really have high stakes, both literally and personally. In fact, compared to the next films, he's easily the least threatening villain. I didn't really like at first Shifu and the Furious Five's treatment of Po in the middle of the movie. Like rude treatment of him. It's kind of a bit mean-spirited, even though they have every reason to doubt he's a Dragon Warrior. But thankfully, they do lighten up towards him as the film progresses. So yeah, this would have to be my second favorite film of the trilogy, and I'd have to give it a 9 out of 10. But then, 3 years later in 2011, we got easily what's obviously my favorite film of the trilogy, and that's the second installment, Kung Fu Panda 2. Yeah, I absolutely adore this film. I think it's probably among DreamWorks' best. I think it's probably have to be tied as DreamWorks' best movie in general, because just everything about this film was just great. Like, and I'm gonna get to why. But I'm gonna say the plot of this one. Well, after the first film, Po's now known as the Dragon Warrior and protects the Valley of Peace alongside his friends and fellow Kung Fu masters, the Furious Five. However, a new dangerous villain threatens Po's awesome new life with plans to use a secret weapon to wipe out the martial art and conquer China. In order to defeat the new enemy, Po finds he must recall his past and unlock secrets of his mysterious origins. Only then will he find the strength to vanquish his foe. So yeah, like I said, this is my #1 favorite film of the trilogy, and here's why. The beautiful animation is a step up from the already technically impressive first film. It expands upon the previous film and dives into subjects like Po's origins, some exciting and fast-paced fight scenes that are also really creative at times, such as the first fight scene, and its darker tone is executed perfectly well. I liked how this movie went more darker and more violent at times, and Lord Shen is actually a really better villain than Tai Lun, especially a good voice performance from Gary Oldman, who while Tai Lun is awesome, was also pretty forgettable, and he has the most personal connection to Po than every other villain in the franchise, since Shen actually took the life of his mother due to the Panda genocide he did, and yes, it's still a comedy. I mean, a hilarious comedy doesn't rely on dark humor. It can still be the darkest film of all time, and even being the reason he is adopted by the goose Mr. Ping. So, lots of very heartfelt scenes, especially those involving Po's origins, and as 2D animated scenes similar to the first film as well, and some funny humor such as the stairs scene. It is perfectly balances the dark elements in the film. And the Soothsayer also has some pretty funny scenes, and this probably has my favorite final confrontation in any DreamWorks animated film ever, and easily one of the best final confrontations in any animated movie ever, and of the franchise. That's the final battle between Po and Shen. As Po destroys Shen's entire armada, and Shen's death is pretty brutal as a cannon falls on him, and plus it's pretty great that Shen accepts his fate at the end, and the stakes are even just higher than before. Or Shen plans to take over China using powerful weaponry, and it's also personal, since this is why Shen kills Po's mother and many other pandas for, and they perfectly captured Po's struggles as past in a realistic way. And the ending, and I also really liked how the ending even teased a setup for the plot of Kung Fu Panda 3 in a very nice way, without feeling too abrupt, also. Now, the only 2 bad qualities I have was, one, the Act 2 breakup between Po and Furious 5 kind of takes too long, and it felt a bit forced, and the probably second most important bad quality I have is that this film unfortunately came out on the same weekend as The Hangover Part 2. Yes, even Nostalgia Critic pointed this out when he talked about this film. Even he was mad that more people went and saw The Hangover Part 2, which was a rehashed sequel to, while a funny movie, not exactly masterpiece worthy. Instead of this. Yeah. And of course people hated Hangover Part 2 because it was literally just the same movie as the first one, while everyone loved Kung Fu Panda 2 because it was not just the first one. It actually did a new story while also taking place taking place just right after the first one ended. So yeah. However, thankfully, that was only in North America. Thankfully, overseas, it beat The Hangover 2's ass at the box office, and it caused it to make even more money worldwide, and that film was $665 million worldwide. So at least that's a bonus. So it was still a success at the box office. Either way, but enough about that. So what would I rank this one? Well, I'd rank Kung Fu Panda 2 a perfect flat-out 10 out of 10. It's just one of those sequels that's better than the first one, easily among DreamWorks' greatest films ever. Just one of the best animated sequels ever made. So, yeah. But then 5 years later, we got what was the third installment of the trilogy, and would probably have to, unfortunately, be the weakest, but still good, and that's Kung Fu Panda 3. Now, yeah, like I said, this would probably have to be the weakest one. I mean, it's still a good film, but I have a lot of nitpicks with it. And we'll get to why in a bit, but what's the plot of this one? Well, living large and loving life, Po realizes he has a lot to learn if he's going to fulfill the next challenge from his beloved instructor, Shifu. After reuniting with his long-lost father, for Li Shang, Po must transition from student to teacher and train a group of fun-loving, clumsy pandas to become martial arts fighters. Together, the Kung Fu Brethren unite to take on the evil Kai, a supernatural warrior who becomes stronger with each battle. And here's why this one's the weakest, but it's still good. I mean, there's still some brilliant animation that's still a step up from the last few films, and the voice acting is still well done. The characters are still as likable as they were in the last films, and Kai's still a pretty awesome villain, even if he's not as epic as Lord Shen. He's still better than Tai Lun. I mean, especially with some good voice acting for J.K. Simmons, and he has a detailed backstory showing how he once knew Master Oogway. And the action sequences are still very fantastic. It's good to find out who Po's real family is, and even develops further into the Wuxi fingerhold of all things. Like in the first film, it was just assumed that Tai Lun just exploded because of it, but it's shown that the ones who get affected by the fingerhold are sent to the spirit realm. Well, as well, and even hikes its positive message for adoptive families. It has a great message about teamwork, as well as how it's important to each person to do something different in a team instead of just being exactly the same. And it still has most of the charm of the original movies, such as how it still uses some of the same quotes, such as "there are no mistakes," and humor is pretty funny at most parts, such as the scene where Kai's Jade Zombies attacks the Panda village and the baby Panda hits one head with a tiger's action, it says, "You're me." And some beautiful visuals, most notably the spirit realm and the power of Chi. I mean, now there are some bad qualities. I mean, some jokes are unfunny. There are certainly ones that stray a little too close to being kind of inappropriate for a kid's film, and some Kai's transition from being a devoted friendly to a power-hungry villain fell a little too quick. And speaking of Kai, despite being a cool villain, he probably is the weakest in motivation, and he was just kind of evil for the sake of being evil, instead of being ambitious like Lord Shen and Tai Lun. And to be fair, and also, I didn't really like Mr. Pain in this film. You know, Po's adoptive father is that goose, yeah. I thought he was a bit too unlikable in this film, but that's just me. So yeah, but all in all, this is still a pretty good film. I kind of wish this were the final film of the franchise. I mean, I know it's rumored that this is supposed to be a 6-film franchise, but personally, I kind of wish they just stop it here, because this was still a good send-off to the trilogy, and I kind of wish this were the last film of the franchise, but I guess we'll see it if the fourth one ever does get made, which I kind of hope doesn't, because this was still a good send-off. But so how would I rank this film? I'd rank it an 8 out of 10. It's still a great film. It's not bad. It's not awful, like most third installments are. But it is definitely the weakest. It has a lot more nitpicks than the first two films, and it falls pretty weak compared to the first two films, but it's still good. So now for the final ranking of the whole trilogy, I'd rank number 1, Kung Fu Panda 2, number 2, Kung Fu Panda, and number 3, Kung Fu Panda 3. That's pretty much how I'd rank the whole trilogy. So yeah. Now I want to know in the comments below, if you have seen the trilogy, how would you rank it? And until then, that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.